Hello, my name is Braverman and I'm the founder and CEO of WavePower. Our company developed a unique, innovative technology for generation of clean electricity from ocean and sea waves. And today I'm here to tell you a little bit about the potential of wave energy, about our innovative technology, and about my personal background story and the reason for my passion in developing this wave energy technology. But let's start from the beginning. Why do we need renewable energy in general? Well, currently 80% of the global electricity is being produced by polluting sources such as coal, oil, and gas. However, according to BP, a study by BP, we have only 50 years left for oil and natural gas and about 110 years left for coal. Which means that the way that we currently harness our electricity is unhealthy for the environment, and it's also not sustainable for a long period of time. Some people say, well, that's not true. For so many years, there have been researchers that have been showing that we're running out of fossil fuels, but we actually keep finding new sources of oil and coal and gas and so on. But let's assume that we had limitless amount of fossil fuel. Do we really want to keep using it for our electricity? This is a picture that is showing the natural disasters that happened in the world. Natural disasters, extreme weather, and so on. The dots that are marked in blue are actually showing us a natural disaster that happened without the control or the intervention of mankind. And the red dots are showing of different disasters and extreme weather that is caused directly from what we are doing to our planet and what mankind is doing to the environment. So we saw many situations of floods and fires like in Brazil, and hurricanes and typhoons and so on that were caused by how we're treating our planet. So even if we could have limitless amount of fossil fuels, do we really want to use it, especially given this situation? Renewable energy can be a big part of the solution to this problem. According to the United Nations, 60% of the worldwide pollution is derived directly from the way that we produce our electricity. So if we would change and replace fossil fuels with renewable energy sources, then we would have a much better future. According to the studies, there is a 25% growth that is expected in energy consumption by the year 2040, which will require more than $2 trillion annually in energy. The 30% of such global demand is expected to be supplied by renewable energy in 2023, which is up from 24 in 2017. So we can see that we have a positive beginning and there is a clear shift towards renewable energy. But why wave energy specifically? Well, first of all, 2/3 of the world population are currently living on the coastline. With this type of population distribution, the need for wave energy is undeniable. We can produce the energy right in our seas and oceans and transfer it to the households. In addition, wave energy is a very stable source. In suitable locations, it can be operational around the clock, day and night. This is as opposed to, for example, solar energy, which is an amazing source of clean electricity, but during the night, winter or cloud coverage, this source is not usable. But the biggest and the most important thing about wave energy is that it can actually produce twice the amount of electricity that the world produces now. Can you imagine the change, the positive change on the world if we will produce 100% of our electricity from renewable energy sources? So if wave energy is such an amazing source, why didn't it commercialize? So actually the answer to this is pretty simple. The first generation of wave energy developers have decided to focus in the offshore. The offshore is few kilometers into the sea or into the ocean. When you're installing these bulky wave energy devices in the middle of the ocean, you're basically facing four main problems. First one is the price of the systems. When you're installing offshore, you need ships, you need divers, you need underwater mooring and underwater cables, and this is very, very expensive. The second problem of offshore wave energy was the fact that it was breaking down all the time. In the offshore, there are wave heights of 20 meters and even higher. And the man-made stationary equipment that is moored to the ocean floor has a problem of surviving the loads that are caused by a wave that is 20 meters in height. So many of these devices, like Pelamis that we see here on the pictures, and some other ones broke down after a few days or few months of operation. Because the devices were very expensive and were low in reliability, insurance companies refused to insure wave energy, which is a big hit, of course, because if you want to get financing as an industry, insurance is a very important part. And the environmentalists, which were supposed to be the greatest proponents of wave energy, were actually objecting offshore wave energy because it created a new presence on the ocean floor, which disturbed the marine environment. So what did we do different? We completely changed the concept. As we can see in the photo here, we did not go to the offshore. We saw it's complicated, we saw it's expensive, we learned from the mistake of our peers, and we came up with a much simpler technology. It's a simple and smart technology for harnessing clean electricity from the ocean and sea waves. So the technology currently has 17 patents and patents pending, and I will show this short film that explains how the technology works.
Floaters are attached to existing structures along the shoreline, such as concrete piers or jetties. The floaters move up and down with the waves. The motion moves a piston that compresses hydraulic fluid. When that fluid is released from an accumulator, the energy goes to a hydraulic motor that turns an electric generator and produces clean electricity. These systems can last over 20 years and are pre-programmed for rough weather.
So as you could see in the short film, the technology is super simple. Most of the expensive part of the system are located on land, just like a regular power station. So all the hydraulic and electrical and the automation parts are located on land, thereby can be maintained from the land side, no need to touch the water. The only thing that is in the water is the floater and the hydro cylinder, and floaters are meant to be in the water. This enables us, of course, to combat the difficulties that were prevailing by the offshore technology. So the competitive advantage of our technology is the fact that it's cost efficient. Most of the equipment, as we saw, is not even in the water. It's 100% environmentally friendly. We do not connect to the ocean floor. We only connect to man-made existing structures. As you can see in this video here, the floaters are freely going up and down, only connected to the man-made structure, so creating zero impact on the environment. The system is fully insurable and is reliable because of the low price of the system and the fact that it's not located in the offshore where the waves are in extreme heights. We were able to get full insurance for the technology. And again, we don't need ships, we don't need divers, we don't need underwater mooring, we don't need underwater cables. It's simple and smart and enables us to produce clean electricity and send it to the grid in an easy and convenient method. In addition, we have a storm-protected mechanism that when the waves are too high for the system to handle, the floaters automatically rise above the water level and they stay in the upward position until the storm passes. When the storm passes, the floaters commence operation. Here we can see a short film from Gibraltar that is showing a storm there. We can see that the waves are high here, they're even bypassing the height of the jetty, and the floaters are no longer working. They went up to the upward position and locked down. We can see here our development pathway. We started in wave-tank testing in the Hydromechanical Institute in Kiev. As you can see here, we were testing different floater shapes because we believe that different locations in the world should have floaters that are tailor-made for their wave climate, and that's how we can reach the highest energy production efficiency. Then, after we finished our wave tank testing and received approval for the workability of the system, we continued to our first off-grid power station that was operational in Jaffa Port since 2014. And now we're in the process of expanding it and connecting it to the grid in collaboration with EDF Renewables IL, with Siemens as our strategic technical partner, and with funding from the Israeli Ministry of Energy. This will be the first time that wave energy will connect to the grid in Israel, which is a very, very exciting and historical moment for us. Since 2016, we have been also operating the only grid-connected wave energy array that is connected to the grid through a power purchase agreement entered with the government of Gibraltar and the Gibraltar National Electrical Company. This project was a really exciting and a pioneering project, and it was funded by the ERDF and by Horizon 2020. The next step of the project is to expand it to a size of up to 5 megawatt, which can provide electricity to up to 15% of all Gibraltar's energy needs. And our next step is to build our first commercial scale wave farm. So what we did so far with WavePower is that we kind of proved that we know how to solve the prevailing problems in the industry. We developed a technology that is not expensive. We developed a technology that doesn't break down, that is fully insurable, and that is 100% environmentally friendly. And now we need to go to our next step and build the first commercial wave farm and prove that not only that we know how to solve the prevailing problems that were prevailing in the past, but we also know how to produce large amount of electricity and become profitable. Here we can see a small video of how a commercial scale wave farm would look like. I would like to finish with a personal story that is explaining why I'm so passionate for wave energy, why it's so important to me, and why am I pushing so hard for the world to recognize it and implement it. So I currently live in Israel, but I was actually born in Ukraine. And 2 weeks after I was born, the Chernobyl nuclear reactor exploded, causing the worst in history nuclear disaster in terms of cost and casualties. And I was one of the babies that got hurt from the negative effects of the explosion. I actually had a respiratory arrest, I stopped breathing, and a clinical death. Luckily, my mother, a nurse, came to the crib on time and gave me a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation that saved my life. I was a lucky baby, but many children and adults were not as lucky as I was. For example, a study came out in Belarus showing that 95% of the newborn babies were suffering from different medical conditions directly resulting from the Chernobyl explosion. So I got a second chance in life. And when you get a second chance in life, it doesn't happen every day, or not to everybody. So of course, in that case, you're feeling very, very special. And you're saying, you know, if I'm special enough to get a second chance in life, I probably didn't get it from no reason. I need to do something good with it. I need to give something back to the world. And I really believe that a great way of giving back is making sure that our generation and the future generations are having safe, reliable, clean ways of getting their electricity. And wave energy, which, as I said, according to the World Energy Council, can produce twice the amount of electricity that the world produces now, is definitely a source that is worth your attention. Thank you very much.
I'm here today with Tor Østervold, founder of EcoSubsea. Tor, first of all, please share a few words about what EcoSubsea is and which key global challenge it is that you aim to resolve.
Thank you very much for having me here, Birgit. I most appreciate it, and I very much look forward to see the full content of what you're delivering this week with Tor. EcoSubsea, we started 12 years ago now, and it aims to make a change for the shipping industry. And when we started it, it was based from our back traveling on fishing vessel, and then we were very lucky and honored to be joining development for a cleaning device for aquaculture nets. And then 12 years ago, we asked AP Møller Maersk if they saw a need for an eco-friendly service that could clean biofouling under the hull of ships, so that they could save fuel and so that they could glide easier through water. And so we started, and it turned out that this nut was not just a typical nut. It was a nut that the US Navy had tried to solve since the 60s. And the problem was twofold. Number one, it was long known and found that biofouling on ship's hull, they are increasing the friction for a vessel gliding through water. And thereby they have to use more power to push the vessel through the water. And thereby, since they need to do that, they are using extensive fuel to be able to push a water just because of biofouling or grass and plants that is growing underneath the hull. So for an example, you could say a large cargo trading vessel could spend up to 15 tons a day of excessive fuel just because of the friction that biofouling causes. And that becomes interesting when you look at it from an environmental friendly point of view, because that means that you have cargo ships running around daily in the world today that is exceeding 45 tons every day of CO2 just because of biofouling. Yeah. Naturally, it is also a very big benefit that if you do something about this, you are also saving them fuel. So it is a payback you get quite soon. And the second,
you have both the financial aspect and the emission aspect.
Yes, exactly. But what has become the driver, which I found quite interesting, that have come so fast, is the biodiversity aspect. Sir David Attenborough, he actually said that biodiversity loss is the single biggest threat to the humankind. As we all know, the nature as we know it is a fine balance. And often biodiversity, species that depends on plants and people who are depending on species, that is a fine chain. And the problem, and one of the biggest threats to the humankind, is if you start taking away some of these links. We see it now with coral reefs. If those die, the fish dies, and then soon it starts interrupting to our food chain and also for other species. So last year, the UN published a report that showed that 1 million out of 8 million species they don't have the fundament to survive. And they also found that one of the biggest reasons why species get extinct, because 70% of the species that we had on the 70s have actually disappeared over these years. And they found that one of the biggest reasons why species disappear is actually because we introduce species from another part of the world. You could look at it like we would take a ship to the North Pole and you would fill it with polar bears, and it'd go to the South Pole and we release it with the penguins. It wouldn't be good. And this happened to a huge extent underneath the hull, because we are having alien or foreign species that is hitchhiking through the biofouling and is then released into local waters. So actually what you're doing here is also when you're then cleaning a ship, but not just let all the biofouling go out in the surrounding port water, but you collect all the water and filtrate it. Then you're also giving the port and the nations and the water border control of the alien invasive species that normally would be introduced to very sensitive environments. So those are the two, in a way, challenges that we are solving, and we are using just simple or quite complex, but robots that goes underneath a ship's hull when they're coming to port, and it goes back and forth, cleaning the bottom like you would cut the lawn. And then when the vessel is finished with cargo operation, it just sails into its route again, but using less speed, less power at the same speed, and also is free from alien power.
And how big is the problem with invasive species? Because I saw a couple of years back, I discovered some brand new jellyfish that I never saw in Norway before. They were beautiful, and they had these colors that changed. And I went in and I Googled them, you know. I found them on Wiki. And then I realized that these jellyfish, they were actually the same species that were invasive coming over from the US, and that had taken out massive fish stocks in the late 80s, early 90s in the Black Sea, and now actually posed a huge threat for the Norwegian marine community. I mean, they are so small. They're like these small jellyfish, and they're beautiful, and you don't even think about it.
Yeah, and I think often we think about foreign or alien invasive species. It sounds so dramatic. You think about it like a Terminator that comes and take over and are eating local species. And we have those examples, like the king crab that's wandering down the Norwegian coast. But in most cases, it is either, like you say, nice fishes or nice jellyfishes that is taking over. Either it could be the food, so the food that other species, local species, should be eating, but it could also be taking up nutrition or taking up sunlight. So it can be big plants that is actually just covering the sea bottom, and suddenly there is no life or no light for the life that was on the bottom. So I think the problem is, of course, big, but it is growing with the amount of coastline you have. So in Great Britain, they found that it costed the government 1.2 billion pounds every year just to try to keep this back from this problem from growing. In Norway, it is a massive threat, and I think number one, because of aquaculture. We have our full coastal line with fantastic, environmentally friendly and nutritious food farming. But I think the biggest threat to our growing economy when it comes to aquaculture is actually the potential import of alien invasive species that does not belong here. They can look cute, but if they then start interrupting the growth of the local salmon, that can be massive challenges.
Yeah. So this is the problem that you set out to resolve. But Thor, you're not like the average entrepreneur coming directly from school and just deciding that, oh, I have an idea. Let's get to work and let's just build a company, right? So you're about my age, I think, 38, 39. And you grew up in a well-established maritime and fishing family as the third generation owner. And yet you decided to start your own company at a young age. You were also the first winner of the Young Entrepreneur Award for North Shipping back in the days with Young Ship. And you have received a number of awards internationally, and you landed collaboration and contracts with big companies. What is it that drove you to become an entrepreneur and do this and set out on this also challenging and difficult journey instead of just joining the family business?
Yeah, it's a very good question and something I've been thinking a lot about. But I think for growing up and have generations before you soon start to analyze that a little bit. And the second part, I think, also growing up in Østervold, which is just an island with 5,000 people, and here you have actually several large international cooperations that has been built up. And I think if you look to the core of it, like you're asking, I think it is about creation. I think it is about creation, and I think it is about eternity. And I think there's a little bit, it is very surreal in a way. It's high words, but I think it is very much opposite to the pure financial gain or just getting from 1 to 2 to 3 as a financial gain. This is much more building something to create jobs, solutions to complex and difficult challenges, or not the least to make sustainable solutions that can make this planet a little bit better state when we are leaving than when we came. And I think the reason why this, in a way, vision and values are found very often in family-owned companies is because they've looked back. And if I look back to the 60s, I look at my grandfather, and I saw when he was starting the fisheries, because he started fishing, and they started fishing herring. And this is a fantastic story, not only of, like you're mentioning, this quick bucks and then you're out. No, the bucks, the money is of course extremely important, but where they are suited best is not in the bank. It is as building bricks in creation, in these creation of the exciting jobs, in the solutions that will take the future and the next generation forward. And for my grandfather, it is also about taking them work hard, and it is about taking risk. And very often that is not something that you will find in an Excel spreadsheet. An Excel spreadsheet will very often show you a risk and return, and it's of course important to give you guidance. But I think when it comes to family business, what you're more looking at is what does the world need tomorrow? Where can we create? And not be afraid of what was, and that necessarily needs to be. Because like you said, for example, with us, we started with fishing and fishing boats. And now we are making robots to take up biofouling. It's very different, but it is still building on the same value-based thoughts about creation and about having an eternity perspective. And my grandfather, for example, they started in after the war, and in the 60s, they actually lost herring. So herring disappeared from the coast. But instead of just burying themselves down, they saw that there must be other fish in the ocean. And they started then fishing blue whiting. And blue whiting was much the savior for them, because you can imagine the whole fundament for them and the family were lost. In Østervold on the island, it wasn't much, you couldn't go and start working at a bank or anything to a big degree. And then they started fishing blue whiting. And in the 80s, they lost the fishery for blue whiting. And then there was some guys who were thinking, what about capelin? And then they started fishing capelin. And I think this is in a way the tradition that has been built on. And today it's a huge pelagic industry here in the Western country. But in the same way as I don't believe that if you follow the status quo, that would take you to eternity. You need to continuously look at what's next and what is the next problem. And by doing that, you can actually follow the same value system, but the shape and color of the business you're running will certainly change. Because I think the only thing that's certain, if you do what was done in the first generation, it won't last. But if you rather let the values that they built on, hard work, built to create, continuously look for development and what is needed out there, I think then you can actually see a business that transforms, even though the leadership and the owners are changing. But you can also then have a history of knowledge and experience that you can take with you when you're then trying to solve the future challenges and the challenges that is ahead. So I think that no, we didn't choose the traditional road that was fishery. And definitely no, we did not choose the easiest way. It was maybe the toughest way. But I must say indeed that I feel definitely it was the most rewarding way to follow. even though it's been a lot of hard work, and it is much more to come.
Definitely. And it is quite amazing as well, because I've seen that working across the entire like ocean industry space of Norway, you see that there are specifically, I think, two regions that really, or two areas that really stand out when it comes to entrepreneurship. And it's Østervold, which is so small, like a tiny community, and still, as you just said, just breeding out these amazing innovations and entrepreneurs like we haven't seen anywhere else. And then of course you have Sunnmøre. So it is like, it seems to be something in the genes or in the soul or yeah, in the family cultures, probably.
Yeah, I think it probably is something about culture there, where it's not about, I think a business is not seen like something where you reap after a long hard work. It's not, the goal is never to reap and in a way to sit left with money. I think the money has very high respect, but it is this focus on, but the money must be used as building blocks. And it is of course nice to have money in the bank, but still it's just what it is. But if there is people coming over and you can see joy in their eyes when they are finishing a day's work and are satisfied with what they've done, or when you come home from job and you see your children and you know that, yes, daddy was late today, he's been working very hard and very long, but it is, every hour has been used actually to propel the world to become a little bit greener for you, little guy, and you, little girl, and for the next generation. And I think that and those feelings, even though the struggles are tough, will always be much more valuable in the longer run. And I think out here then in Østervold, but also Møre, as you mentioned, these values and also building companies for eternity. So it doesn't mean that you should control and sit and I will keep it. Not necessarily, even though that often is important, because you need to ensure that the company follows not just with shortcuts and short choices and decisions. It needs to have a decision line that follows the long lines. And I think that is also very, very something that you will find in this culture, that it is built on not quarter by quarter or year by year development. It is much more focused on this eternity vision, where you can see that, okay, so we've been lucky to actually have a job. We've been lucky to be able to take choices, but we need to scarcely ensure that we are taking choices today and we're working hard today in order for this to continue going forward, because we are also just pieces in a big cycle of life. And I think that is also a recognition that it brings purpose to the daily work that you're doing.
That is I think your values in general and leadership it's such a good example of this type of very like a steady and still exploring culture. And Tor, I mean, we all know, having built stuff, that it is fun and there are a lot of hinders and things come up that you never expected. And can you tell us what has been your key challenges and what has been your key strengths building EcoSubsea?
Yeah, but definitely it's been challenges, and I think some of the key challenges starts in the very beginning, because I remember then the first year when you're actually, what you're envisioning is like a painting, but you're trying then, but since it doesn't exist, you have to try to explain how this painting look with the colors and the light and everything that is in it. And then you need, for example, you need customers, you need funding, you need not the least the product to in a way be developed in this time where it's just when it's just a dream. And I think then you can break that down to several points, but definitely finding the key customer who see the same and is aware of not only the status quo, but dare actually to take a bet on you and actually follow through with test facilities, be it whatever you need to get there, is crucial. For us, that was Wilhelmsen, and the person was Philip Svensson, who saw that, well, I'm sitting here as vice president of operations. I could have this friendly servicing of ships. We're going to need that in 5 years, in 10 years time. And thereby, when people and companies who see that becomes crucial for entrepreneurs. And for us then, we saw that the development of Wilhelmsen was fantastic. And when we then used the 4 first years just to develop the product, then we have the 4 years thereafter just to build up the efficiency of it. Since then, since we have started delivering, we have actually been giving Wilhelmsen first priority. And that is also, thank you so much for believing in us to start it. And of other challenges that we've had is, of course, finance, because we have chosen an expensive hobbies, both you and me. And I think you can have different sources of funding, and we've had many large companies and funds who wanted to just take over the company and buy the company over time. But we've seen that we need people on board who brings on the finances, who is looking at the future. They need to share the same values and the same visions. Otherwise, we just pump up, and this is a typical case where you can just pump up and sell. And that is of no one's interest. So that has been actually challenging to get in contact with those who have similar mindsets as ourselves. But we've been lucky, and with, for example, Hatteland and North Sea Shipping, we have had collaboration with partner who's naturally thinking it needs to be profitable, it needs to be a good business case, but not the least, it needs to be that as well in 5 and 10 and 20 years ahead, and also that it shares the same values, because that is very much impacting the way you're building the company day by day. For us, well, I think the dream. I think the dream has been important for us, and that everybody on the team share a dream of making a difference. I think also that we have been hard workers has been important, because very often we started very early with giving out a pin when you've been working 24 hours. And that, in a way, it was just funny, because it almost happened every operation we had. So I think hard work is, of course, and persistent, that you, in a way, you're not taking the first no as the final, because then we could just stop immediately, because we tried to solve a problem that had been tried to solve for a very long time ago. And I think that 90% of the calls I had the first 4 years was starting with a no. So I think there is certain things that you can see shining through in a team that's necessary. And very often it's not about waiting for something to make itself. It is about buckle up and knock on.
Yeah, and basically creating the future.
I think so. I don't think in just sitting back in the chair and waiting for the future to happen, sitting back in the chair and being afraid of the future. And I think we need to sit back in the chair often to evaluate and look at how the world is developing, but not be taken and pushed down by fear or despair, but rather look at fear and challenges as energy, like it is in physics. And energy, of course, can be used to push you down, but if you are calm and look for solutions, it certainly can be used as energy to propel stuff and solve future challenges as well.
Okay. And Tor, we see, at least in the Norwegian family businesses, we see, big companies that have existed for generations, and then you end up having a lot of owners with different values, different mindsets, different wishes for their lives. And we also know that a lot of the current family business owners who are in the seats in the boards and the management groups, in the last generations, they weren't necessarily able to choose. They were, delivering on the kind of the family expectations. So you needed to really just step up for the family and down prioritize your own skill sets or your own dreams. And now those parents, they want for their kids to be able to choose for themselves. But at the same time, those young owners don't necessarily have the same passion, or it's not always so easy for parents to transmit this kind of entrepreneurial message and how amazing it can feel to build a company or to create like active value-based sustainability focused ownership. It's just, a lot of the kids, they have just seen parents that are traveling, that are working all the time, that are not at home. And what you are kind of representing something in between here, because you come from family heritage, you have built something on your own, and it is different, but it is still connected. Kind of represent what I believe in personally, which is really to find innovation in the side, in the outer framework of the core business. And what is your key message to other young owners of family businesses? What do you also consider the key difference? You mentioned it, but the key difference between the family businesses and the kind of more financially owned corporates, and why is this active ownership so important for a country such as Norway?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting subject, and not the least a very important, because I think you can look at yourself as someone who is then just looking after values that has been created. But I think that is very much limitation of self, and that's very much limitation of people, because it also means a lot of duties and a lot of things that you need to fulfill. And I think very often it is also about the number. You heritage this number and must not go lower, it must go up. But in a way, that is so limiting. I think it is much more valuable to limit oneself as an owner from the monetary value itself, but look at each of us, because we are individuals who are here just for a very short time in the world, and I think we are all still building blocks who could ensure status quo is kept. We can destroy things, but we can create, and I think that means that you should or could, because not everybody's interested, but I think there is so much value in going out and not limit oneself to the boundaries that you're born into, but rather look at yourself as one of these building blocks who can create new working spaces, that can create new solutions. And then it is about daring to jump into things you don't know, because there is so many people today who just want heritage or young people who come from family business just to take all the money in a bucket and we'll put it in fund, we'll put it in this, we'll put it in that, and they're just going to secure the money. But I think, no, life is not about securing money. Life is about a lot of things. And if you're so lucky that you have the building brick called money, that can be extremely explosive when it comes to creation. And therefore, my advice is to in a way look outside the box. Don't feel limited by what you're born into, but see it rather like an opportunity to make a change. And then don't be limited by the amount or the number, but much rather look at what can I create going forward? And in some situations that would be not, it wouldn't be the money in itself, it would be the work or your thoughts or what you can do. In some places it would be the money, but I think it is very much about not looking at your life as something that you're gonna keep at the status quo, and also the family heritage, like something you're gonna keep at the status quo, but much rather look at the opportunities that is ahead and how you can play a part of that, and being unafraid, being willing to look to take some of the and watch yes, joining discussions with entrepreneurs, and joining also discussion that is about difficult challenges that the world is facing, and then looking at it from that point of view, how can I play a role? So I think it's much more about taking the focus from you as a person, what you're born into, rather than I'm just a little brick here. But there is so much that is so much more important. But my little brick can be an important brick, and I can be part of solving things. But that is not going to be by in a way following a pattern that you'll find in a book. No, likely it's going to be solutions, building companies in the future that we still doesn't know what is. So I think cut the boundaries, look at the future and be unfearful, jump out in it, and join companies who wants to build, or join ideas who wants to build the future, not so much just looking at how it was done before.
Thank you so much, Tord. I think we couldn't have dreamed of a better closing of this conversation. At least for me, I find it super motivating to hear from inside your brains. We will move on in the program, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Birgit. It was great to be here. Thank you.
Super.
Hi everyone, I'm Liane Thompson, and I'm the CEO of Aquaii, and we make ocean tech for positive impact. When you look at today's world, it's filled with superstorms, flooding, overpopulation, overfishing, and a dying sea. And it was that ocean crisis that led us to found Aquaii. It all started with a promise. When one little girl learned about the ocean crisis at school and came home, and she asked her father to please save the seas. You see, little girl grew up in her father's lab. He was a roboticist, and she watched him build at least a dozen 2-meter-tall robots to study human-robotic interaction, long before it was an acronym. Her father is Simeon Pietarkowski, and he's more than just a roboticist. He's also a climate change expert and an inventor. And when I met him, I was doing a story on the Q of Israel, as in James Bond 007 Q. See, my profession actually at the time was that of a journalist. I covered Europe in the 90s, the Middle East in 2000. I was an executive with the New York Times. I ran a very large division. I even put Anthony Bourdain on television. So I was in Israel, and I met Simeon. And the more I learned about the ocean crisis, the more I realized that I too wanted to join in that promise to save the seas. When we relocated to my native, the US, Simeon and I formed Aquaii. Now, as a young company in Silicon Valley, the first question is, prove it. So we did. We built many prototypes to prove that we could make various robots look and swim like real fish. Then the next question is, why a fish? Well, if you take Simeon's background in animatronics and robotics, he understood we could use fin propulsion to save on power and become more efficient, also more eco-friendly, so we could immerse with the natural habitat. So when we were looking at which market we would enter, as a journalist, a robot fish to monitor live fish, that I could tell. We knew that the industry was moving into precision fish farming, and we knew that if we could take all the sensors and cameras and put them on our robotic fish, we would get up close to the source, in this case the live fish, and be able to to gather the most precise data. We took static cameras and sensors and we moved them onto the platform. And so what happens is the robot swims inside the cage, it gathers the data, it comes to our backend and is pushed forward to a customer dashboard. So we're fish as a service. We do more than just give the data. We also are able to perform tasks. We can monitor fish behavior clearly through our cameras. We can detect net holes and send out early warnings. We can swim at different depths in order to get readings, environmental readings. So we're that perfect tool for the farmer. And we're an affordable tool. That is the most important thing here, I should say, is besides being an all-in-one system, we're also an affordable system, which makes farmers really want to try our technology. So we reached out to one of the most sustainable farms, Aquaii, here in Norway, and we asked them to just try our fish. So they did.
Until the next time.
So Aquaii are early adapters to technology. They anticipate that we'll be able to save them considerably by giving them that real-time data and keeping both their ocean healthy and their seafood healthy, as well as help them keep up with a growing demand. We recently opened Aquaii Norway to be closer to our customers, as well as other collaboratory partners like Nofima that we're starting to work with. Our goal is also to work outside of the cages. As an Ocean Tech for Positive Impact company, we're looking beyond fish farms, also into smart cities, also in doing a pilot with the European Space Agency, who featured us as a new data source at Oceanology. Our goal is to have the largest impact possible, and that means going across various industries. We have a very capable team, which includes SpaceX scientists and NASA engineers. It's a very international team coming from the UK, South Africa, Italy, Portugal, Turkey, as well as the US. We have a great group of advisors and VCs that are supporting us. Our business today has significant achievements. We've received an Innovation Norway grant that is allowing us to grow. We've done a successful 8-month pilot where we swam 24/7 in the Arctic Ocean. We have strategic partners in place, as well as Nofima for R&D collaboration efforts. And we have $2 million in purchase orders that we're going to start delivering on next month. You can read about us as well as hear about us on podcasts. And we would like you to help us with the journey of saving the seas. Thank you.
Hi, Agnes. So, Agnes Arnadottir, you are the CEO and founder of Brim Explorer. And you grew up in a fishing and maritime family as 5th generation owners from Iceland. And yet you decided to start your own company at only 31 years of age. And last year, you were the first female winner of North Shipping and Young Ship's Young Entrepreneur Award. And this Monday, this week, our Prime Minister, Erna Solberg, congratulated you as winner of the Vista Leadership Award 2020. That's quite amazing. And I also know how hard you have worked for years. And can you tell me, Agnes, what is it that drove you to become an entrepreneur instead of, going the easy path and joining a family business?
Yes, and thank you for having me, Birgit. It's been a quite intense week, but it was a great honor to get the prize from Vista and have the nice speech from Prime Minister Erna Solberg. Well, I grew up in a family company in Iceland in a small fishing village called Húsavík. My father and my uncle, they started a boat tourism company when I was 9 years old, and it was the first whale watching company in Iceland. So I started working there, as in with every other family business, you kind of have to be a part of it, whether you want or not. So my first role was to clean the boats when we had the tourists, and that first season we had 1,500 guests, and the company grew and grew. And at the time I moved to Norway when I was 22 years old. I had been guiding almost every summer for whale watching. However, I had kind of grown tired of working in a family company, if that's okay to say. And I wanted to do something else. So I moved to Norway and started studying political science. And then I worked in the environmental NGO Bellona for a few years. And at one point I kind of realized that I wanted to continue, or I basically wanted to go back to business and working with environmental challenges and trying to push others to make the change, either politicians or business in general. It was a very tempting idea to try to do something on my own. So I teamed up with a former a colleague from university, and also my father came in as an investor, and we decided that we really believe in the electrification, and we saw that when it comes to electrification of the transportation on land, we have come very far, and we wanted to, and we were quite convinced that the time was ripe to speed up the innovation in the maritime sector as well. And having the background from boat tourism, that was a natural place to go back into. So basically, the long answer, we decided that we wanted to build a purpose-built electric ship for sightseeing, and that way we could both push the tourism industry into a greener direction, and we could also create ocean ambassadors from all over the world, tourists, by showcasing the green technology and also educate the guests about the life underneath the ocean surface. Yeah, so that was the background.
And I mean, you have gained also so much visibility on your path towards recruiting more ocean ambassadors. And Brim Explorer, I think only in January, was awarded as one of the top 50 tourism experiences all around the world for 2020. But of course, now we are in the middle of COVID-19, and your biggest customer partner, Hurtigruten, are not so much operating right now. And there is a really big constraint all through the tourist season, so you've had to kind of rethink. But aside from the COVID situation, what has been your key challenges and strengths coming from a family business background? Because I mean, that can both be a strength, and it can in some ways also be somewhat hindering.
Yeah, definitely. That's the weakness is the same thing in a way, because when you come from a family business, you're, at least in my experience, you're very used to go into every role there is and do whatever needs to be done at that specific time. And that can also be a weakness, because as the company develops, you kind of need to you need to step aside, and you need to make the people that are best at certain things actually do that kind of things. So that is the challenge by growing a company, and that's also something I could see very clearly in my own family company in Iceland, that kind of going from a stage where the family members do basically everything into growing a company where you get qualified people to step into the right roles. It's an important part of the development, I would say.
And you have very much chosen your path based on purpose and the aim to really make a difference with your work. And with that in mind, of course, it's so important to bring in people that you work with and surround yourself with that share some of the same value basis. And what are the typical factors of values that you would typically optimally seek when it comes to partners, customers, and also investors?
That's a very good question. We have been raising capital, as we have for the past 2 years, in order to finance the 2 first ships, and we have tried to find investors that not only share our vision and values, but that are also kind of hungry to kind of make that change and to grab the opportunity and the window of opportunity that we really believe in right now. And that means going quite fast forward, both in because it takes time to build a ship as the one we have, and for us to really optimize the technology and the design of the system, we need to build ships quite fast. Now we have 2, and the second is better than the first, but sooner rather than later we would also like to continue and finalize the design of the third ship, which then is even more optimized. So kind of sharing the belief in the technology, but also sharing the eagerness to kind of get to drive the innovation and actually be forefront all the way, and not only in the beginning.
And you're also then looking for investors specifically with more kind of long-term commitments?
Yes, definitely. This is
and I know that I think Mette mentioned earlier today that 80% of the world's capital is within family businesses, and in Norway I think it's 3 out of 4 companies that are family owned. So the next generation owners play a critical role in using that capability really to redefine and build our society. And what is your key message that you would like to get across to other young owners of family businesses? And what do you consider the key difference between the family-owned companies and the more strictly financial owners?
The family companies are usually more long-term. They have they have a vision that goes a bit further into the future, as we've been talking about. And I guess my kind of advice to young family members that are working in a family company or owning or running it is to dare to trust your gut feeling, and if you really believe that either a vision or a strategy it a try and look as far into the future as possible, and at the same time as you don't forget the important steps on the road.
Thank you so much, Agnes. It has been so great to hear today, both from the investors and the current kind of big players and the entrepreneurs. I think the future is really best created when we build together across the establishment and the startups. And thank you so much. And well, smooth sailings.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Birgit.